All right, thank you for joining us. This is a webinar where we're going to be talking about engraving, and in particular, the DE-3 from DGSHAPE, which is one of our products. My name is Joe Wigsell. I look after the Roland Academy, and I'm joined today by
Peter Kettle. I look after the 3D side of the business.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through sort of a little presentation on the screen. As we mentioned just then, there is a chat box, so try and ask any questions throughout the session. We'll pause to answer some questions, and then we'll probably answer the rest at the end. If we don't get round to answering all of them, what we'll do is email you after the session. We've got the product here as well, so we'll jump over a little bit later and take a look at that. And we've got some samples and things that we can talk about as well. But first of all, what we'll do is just jump over into this presentation, and I'll hand over to Pete.
It's just a few slides just to set the background, really. The DE-3 is the latest generation of a machine that, we first started developing this back in 1987. So I started selling the forerunner of this, I think, in 1995 or 96. So it's an extremely well-established line. It's been our most popular, best-selling engraving machine. I hazard to say probably is the world's best-selling computerized engraving machine, the volumes that we do globally. So it's gone through various iterations, and the latest one, the DE-3, has some nice, interesting bells and whistles. So how does it fit within the product lineup? Some of you may know the Mataza, the MPX 95 is the latest generation, and that's a little impact engraver exclusively for marking onto metals, so small gift items and tally plates, that kind of thing. We also do the EGX 30A, which is a very simple, easy to use engraving machine, again, hugely popular. We sell this into the funeral industry by the bucket load for coffin plates, as well as gift items as well. But the DE-3 sits in the middle of these 2D engraving machines and the three-dimensional milling machines. So we've got the ability to do standard engraving and then something a little bit special as well.
So it's 2.5D.
It's 2.5D, if that makes sense to anyone.
Yes. I guess stuff you can feel recesses and things.
Yeah, so I suppose you'll see it when you walk around cathedrals or something. Bas relief is the other term for it. So yes, you've got shape that you can feel, but we can't create a full three-dimensional object. So why are we talking about engraving? Why have we released an update to this machine? Because a lot of people consider engraving to be a very traditional method of personalization. But, something we found is sometimes what is old can also appear to be new to a new market. And when you look on places like, not on the high street, there are tens or hundreds of thousands of objects that are being engraved, being personalized in this way. And you look on Etsy, it's a phenomenal amount of work that people are doing with engraving. So forget the beware of the dog signs, and that kind of thing. Please close the gate. Engraving has moved on, and there are so many different opportunities that we can work in. So let's just have a quick flick through some of the examples that we've put together recently. So traditionally, it's known for signage, so that might be for a restaurant, or it might be for a hotel. It might be the key fob for the hotel, the key tags, or it might be for the restaurant numbers on the tables. But a quick walk around TK Maxx or any other store that sells weird odds and ends will net you a ton of different objects made of bamboo and walnut and what have you, and all of these can be personalized. So there's some examples here of chopping boards and God knows what. More traditional is the gift market. This is a hip flask, and we can engrave very, very intricate detail with this machine. We've also sold a huge amount of these machines outside the personalization industry and into industrial applications and for education. So this is just an example of a printed circuit board that has been engraved where we have removed the copper, so we've isolated the tracks, and then you've got a fully functioning short run or prototype PCB.
That's quite interesting, yeah.
And architectural models, traditionally these have been produced using more and more with laser engravers, and what they'll do is they'll burn card, and then you can construct the fascias of the buildings with that. But what happens is, particularly on the educational side for architects, is you end up restricting their creativity by the technology that they have available in order to make their model. So with this ability to create bas relief, with this ability to control the depth of what we're doing, we can create something more realistic, something more lifelike. The jewelry industry. This is something where we have always done a lot of work. Now, jewelers more and more have been moving over to 3D printing because of the complex geometry that you can create with this technology. But there's a couple of examples here. We've got a bangle, and you can see the hummingbird towards top left. This is from a company called Simon Harrison, a very well-known, very well-established jewelry manufacturer. The issue they have with 3D printing is when they're going to a large client, trying to convince that large client that the piece of plastic in their hand is actually going to feel right when it's actually worn on the body. So they prefer to produce something in metal. And the DE-3 and its forerunner have the capability, somewhat slowly, to produce very, very fine detail to create mock-ups. So the bangle, for example, would have been produced as a flat sheet, engraved, fret cut, polished, bent to the form, and then plated.
Well, you can see the detail in that
exactly
piece.
And it looks and feels like the real thing, and stunning, absolutely stunning. Bottom left, you'll see there is a Viking coin, and this is another application where the output of the machine is not the final product. So what you produce on the machine maybe is a pattern or a mold, and in this case it was for precious metal clay, which was then pressed into the mold and then fired to give the solid silver piece at the end.
Interesting. Just so you guys know, on the screen there, the reason we keep looking down is that the presentation's on a monitor in front of us here, so that's why we're not always looking at the camera.
Absolutely, absolutely. So looking at this one again, this is industrial applications that we can put through the machine, and this is for vacuum forming. So again, we can make a shape. The little drill holes are not woodworm. These are to help evacuate the air around and to draw the plastic down. So the color tray at the top is just an example of what you can produce from a model. And again, this is another example of where the output of the machine is just a stage process to go to the next step in production. So this was actually a Japanese chap that used the machine to try and recreate a little robot figure that you used to get in your cereal box in the 1970s. Not available anymore, of course. So he recreated that shape in milling it, engraving it in wax, and then pouring silicon to make a two-part mold, which he then injected, hand-injected polyurethane for the final products.
Again, the detail's pretty amazing on them, isn't it? I've seen the white block that you can see there is kind of this kind of size. Yeah,
you're talking of about 50 or 60 millimeters in length, something like that. So again, you're engraving once, but you're creating a pattern that will then go to a mold, and you can produce hundreds, if not thousands, of products from that one. So when you put it all together, actually what's possible with these engraved machines is it's very diverse. It's very varied. So most people's perception of what engraving is probably just only a very small segment of actually what is possible. And I think that one of the things I would urge anybody that's considering going into engraving is to spend some time looking on Etsy, looking on not on the high street, to gain some inspiration, really, of what is possible. And that way you're also able to work out what kind of return on investment that you might get, because you can pick up many different examples, have a look at the selling price of the product, and then with our support we can help you. We can put you in line with suppliers of the blank materials, and you can get the cost price of what it's going to cost for you to do, and give you an idea of how long it's going to take as well to produce.
So other than the materials we're looking at there, what are popular materials to engrave?
There is a whole industry behind the supply of engraving plastics. So we call these engraving laminates because they are laminated sheets. So you'll have a top color and a core bottom color underneath. So that would be a black white laminate, or a red white, or white red, and you will cut through, exposing the core color underneath.
That's what if you can see on your screen, that skull and crossbones kind of design is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Similar to that.
Yeah, exactly. That skull and crossbones actually, I think, was like a face plywood. But yeah, many different kinds of plastics, both flexible and rigid. On the industrial side, you'll hear a lot of people talk about Traffolite, which was a very famous brand of this kind of plastics. But the Roman fascia that we did for the architectural sample, that's actually corian. The corian is used for kitchen worktops and bathrooms and that kind of thing. Used a lot in the hotel and restaurant trade because it can be heat formed as well. So you can bend it to shape, you can mold it to shape, but it engraves beautifully. So again, there's a huge supply of corian and other brands that are very similar, that can produce really nice results. And as you can see from the examples, wood is becoming more and more popular as well because it's such a tactile
I guess there's all
material.
So many different finishes to the wood as well that you can get.
And there seems to be quite an intrinsic value in the nature of wood anyway, even though some of these products are very low cost indeed. They're mass produced out of sustainable products. Bamboo, for example, extremely fast growing. The central round to it, the chopping board bottom left, the chopping board top left, that's all bamboo. Very low cost, very sustainable. It's nice to be working something other than plastic. Yeah. Plastic is in the news a lot, not always for the good. But in addition to that, we have polyurethane modeling boards. So if you were producing molds or jigs or vacuum form molds, there's a whole range of different densities of this material as well that's available. And some that will have some metallic content as well. And as we saw with examples with Simon Harrison, you can engrave deeply into metal with this. It's not something we'd recommend doing on a daily basis if time is critical to you, because it's going to take its time. And maybe if that's what you need to do, you need to look at our milling machines. But for occasional use where time is not of the essence, it can produce really nice results. And
just as a separate side to this, I guess, what other technology does a product like the DE-3 or one of our other engravers buddy up well with?
Cool. Okay.
So what kind of people might have these? Obviously, if you could have it as a standalone machine on its own, but it works well with other machines.
No, absolutely. And I think that we're very fortunate with the gamut of products that we do, that when you look at something like the LEF series, the UV cured ink print systems, the engravers are a really nice link to that as well, nice add-on. So if you're into personalized gifts, but you have a client that prefers the traditional bright diamond drag finish on metal products, whether it's business card holders or flash memory sticks or something like that, then that's where the DE-3 would really come into its own. But also if you're printing onto an acrylic, and maybe you need to shape that acrylic or drill holes or create some kind of fascia on it, then as a two-part process, take it off the printer, put it on the engraver, and then finish it that way. So it sits very nicely really with any personalization technology, really, because all we're talking about is an alternate method allowing you to open up more substrates.
And bigger kit as well. Just thinking, like a large CNC, for example, effectively that's almost a baby, a baby router. So if you've got the bigger kit as well, that could sit
absolutely. If you've got a large router or CNC, but you're finding yourself doing a lot of smaller objects, it's a pain in the butt to be putting these items on the big machines all the time. So having something small that's quick and easy to use, and that's the other thing. The big machines are quite intimidating. So I think a lot of people in companies are put off. So you end up getting one or two specialists on that product. It becomes their baby, their problem. With something like DE-3, we know here, come December, come Christmas time, the amount of jobs that are done after hours on this kind of technology. It is very popular and it is very easy to use. And I would also say about sign makers as well. If a sign maker has got a traditional eco-solvent printer and is offering signage, we can produce signage on this that's just on a rigid substrate. That's what it does, and you can create some really nice architectural pieces that can sit inside the receptions of offices and restaurants and what have you. You imagine acrylic multi-layered blocks that are freestanding. It is sculpture. It is simple as that. And you can use the form of the engraving to then drop shadows onto the wall and what have you. It's a really nice asset to any site.
Yeah, crafts and arts as well.
Absolutely, and we have one customer who produces pin looms and is now looking at shortbread molds. So the diversity of people that are using our technology is right through from kitchen table, which is traditionally your Etsy and not on the high street customers, right through to major manufacturers.
Brilliant.
So yeah, a wide assortment of what we can do. So now let's talk about the nuts and bolts. So we've talked about what it does. Let's talk about how it does it, because again, it can be quite intimidating when people first look at engraving. They need to understand a little bit about the materials. They need to understand a little bit about the tooling and what goes with it. And you will be using spanners with it. So this is just a quick overview just to help me explain really that it's not that difficult. In the center of this image, you'll see that there's a little plastic card, which is a credit card sized guide, which I keep in my wallet all the time when I'm working on an engraver, because what I need to know about the tool, if I'm cutting into wood or I'm cutting into plastic or anything where I'm cutting deeply, I'm going to be typically using one type of cutter, and they're on the left hand side, the two that are encroaching onto the bottom left corner of the card, and they look pointed. So these are my rotary tools. So they look like they come to a point, but in actual fact, there's a little flat on the end there. So if I am producing small lettering, then I need to use a smaller tip, a finer tip. If I'm just like a pen, if I'm producing large letters, I want to go for a fatter cutter because it's going to be quicker to engrave.
Makes sense.
So on the card at the bottom, you've got a little scale there, and what I'll do is I'll just simply just push the tool up against the card, and that will give me a pretty accurate indication as to the width of the tip, and then I'll set that in my software. So for typical engraving applications deep into material, I'm going to use the tool on the left hand side, or different sizes of that one. The tool at the bottom is a diamond tool, and it's purely a conical pointed diamond, and all that's going to do is scratch the surface. So if we are working on metal objects, we'll have a close look at this in the middle, a hip flask, then I'm going to scratch the surface with the diamond. And then finally on the right hand side, you've got three tools, top right of the card, and these are your traditional milling tools. So I would use these if I'm doing some kind of engineering work, or I'm making a mold or something, and I need to rely on the mechanical accuracy. Whereas the tools on the left are V-shaped, and therefore the deeper they go, the wider everything goes. These are straight-sided. So I know exactly what kind of depth, what width I'm going to get, regardless of what depth I'm going to cut.
So for the layperson who's not an engraving whiz, It's not just an engraver, right? I guess it cuts out things as well.
Exactly. So it is that halfway house between our 2-dimensional engraving products and our 3-dimensional milling machines. So very, very versatile. And then across the top, we've simply got the collets, just like the chuck on your drill. We need to be able to hold the different range of widths of cutters that there are. And then finally, top left-hand side, that round mechanism with the green plastic end. This is a depth regulator, and basically we can use that to control our depth by the amount the cutter is sticking out the end, and it'll just ride across the surface. So it's not difficult in any shape or form. This, you can keep it as simple as you need to.
Yeah, it's not a huge amount of tools and bits and bobs that you've got there.
No,
to learn.
So let's take a look at the software.
Sure.
Let's just design something.
Just give us a moment whilst we swap sources here. Bear with me.
So let's start a new job. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the size of our material. Now the DE-3 can engrave up to 305 by 230 millimeters. So let's just put 300 by 150. And now we can set the thickness of the material, and this can be useful because it will warn you actually if the depth of your engraving is going to go any deeper than the material. So let's say the material is let's go for 10 millimeters. So when I click on OK, I've now got a rectangular box which represents the 300 by 150 that I've sized. I'm now going to just add my text in. I'm just going to reach across. We've got too many things on the desk. In goes text. Choose a font style that's got a little bit of style to it. And I'll just guess at a size to start with. Obviously, it's in completely the wrong place, so let's just set that in the middle. And I want to make it larger.
So you've got a reasonable amount of editing capabilities, it looks like, on the left-hand side there, creating shapes and text.
I have to say that this software, I should have introduced it. This is VCarve Desktop, and this is what we bundle with the DE3, and it is a fully featured engraving program. Ability to lay down our traditional 2-dimensional engraving. We can, as I will do with this, carve to create something that looks like it's been produced by hand, by a skilled craftsman rather than just a monkey. And we've got the ability to import an STL file now. An STL file is a 3-dimensional file that can be embedded into the material on the surface of your plaque, and then to create that really nice bas relief. So yeah, and it will suit the creative person, and it will suit the industrial designer. So here, if I need to put specific sizes and positions for holes, for cutouts, then it's all there. From a style point of view, some of the fonts, the kerning, the space between the individual letters is often not quite so good, and it's just picking up all the true types fonts that we have on the computer. So I'm just looking at where the R and the V is. We've got a bit of an overlap. Let's just open that up. V and E are not friends, so let's make them a little bit closer. So we can run through that design and just tweak that. And do you know the difference? You'll know this from your design side. The difference it makes. Yeah. Just 30 seconds of considering kerning, it can make a world of a difference to the product. Yeah. So on the left-hand side, this is where we do all our design work. When we've completed that, we move to the right-hand side, and this is where we apply our tool paths. And the tool paths are what the engraving machine needs to see.
Minimize this a minute, Pete, just so they can see. There we go.
Good. That'll make it easier for me to use as well. Okay. So I've got lots of different options in here, but let's just take a look at the V carving. It's a really nice feature. So I'm going to turn the depth limiter off, because what I want it to do is I want it to use the shape of the tool to create a carved effect, and I don't want to limit that on this. So in the list, you would have the tools that you have available to you. So I've got this one, so I'm going to use this one. It's a 35-degree cutter with a 0.2mm tip.
It might be a little bit hard for you guys to see this on your screen, some of the smaller text, but yeah, just a quick overlook, I guess.
So in here we've got settings that basically tell the machine how fast it can engrave through the material, how deep it can engrave per pass. And that's all fully editable as well. So once you get the hang of it, you can then start copying these and editing them and making them your own. So let's calculate that tool path. So it goes away, does all the hard work. Now at this stage, we don't really know what it's going to look like. It looks a little bit spidery, but it's got a great feature, this software, to preview.
That was a nice one.
Yeah, and you can save the preview as well. So if you need to preview it to a client, you can change the simulated material to whatever suits best. Change the color, filling color. Let's just go for white. So this could be a slate sign for a house nameplate, for example.
Very nice. Yeah.
And then email that to the client, get the approval. They've checked the spelling, and away you go. So really nice, really nice feature. So what I don't want to do with the engraver, it's going to be a little bit too loud if we start carving things like slate. So we're going to do just a diamond drag job. So okay. This means we're going to take the diamond point and we're going to scratch the surface of some metal. So let's just start a new job. And we thought we'd show you just something a little bit different. So we've got Mother's Day coming up. Don't forget, end of the month. And we've decided, Joe, that your mum's going to like a luggage tag.
She'll love a luggage tag.
It was either that or a lighter or a hip flask. So this was the best of the bunch that we had available to us. So let's have a look at the size of that luggage tag, 83mm by 50. And I'm going to enter those sizes in here. Okay. So we can do as before. We can type in some text, but we thought we'd hand type it. And the sharp ones may have seen earlier on the screen. We had a go at this earlier as well. So do you want to scribble
I'm going to scribble a little message down to my mum. So best mum ever, love, Joe. There we go. So we'll just quickly take a photo of that, and then we'll import that into the software.
We'll just try and do it so we don't get the cable. Can you just push that cable out of the way a little bit and make sure it doesn't get in shot? There we go.
Brilliant.
Super. So let's just refresh that. That's our image, I hope, looking at the date and time. So I'm just going to pop that on the desktop so I can find it, and let's go back to our software. So the software has the ability to import what's known as vectored files or bitmap files. So a bitmap is when you take a photo, and a vector file is when you've drawn lines in CorelDRAW or Illustrator. Now, the vector lines are perfect for engraving because it's a line ready for the engraver to follow. But we haven't got that. We've got Joe's handwriting. So we're going to import the bitmap. So here we go. That's the latest one, isn't it? Yeah, 330. So let's bring that in. There we go. So let's see how we can vectorize this. So this is, as you've seen, it is just handwritten from a marker pen on a piece of paper. We've got a lot of shadow on here because, of course, our lights are directly above us. But to be fair, if I just do a quick preview without making any changes to the settings, it looks all right. What I might do is just isolate if there's any little islands of sort of 1, 2, or 3 pixels, which are definitely, we don't need those. We'll get rid of those. But yeah, let's apply that. And then what I can do is I can remove the original bitmap. And there we go.
All right.
Let's just move that up a little bit so it's a little bit centered. And also, because it's a luggage tag, it's got that slot on the side for the leather strap. So we'll just put it over to the side a little bit just to make the adjustment. So it's not perfect by any means. If we zoom in, of course, it's picking up the felt tip pen and how it's reacting with the fibers of the paper and so on. And the only reason why I point that out is it'll take just a little bit longer for the machine to engrave this because it's got to work up and down in each of those little areas. But it looks pretty good to me. Your handwriting's better than mine by a mile.
Don't know about that.
So back over to our toolpaths. Now we're going to go to the function called Quick Engrave. And in here, I can tell it this time. I don't want a real depth, because I'm using a diamond that's going to press onto the surface. So it's a pressure. So I'm going to tell it to compress the spring by 2 millimeters. So it's going to touch the surface, squash down 2 millimeters. Let's calculate that. And as far as the software is concerned, that's pretty much ready to go. So can we switch to the other camera and then we can have a look at setting up the machine?
Oh, just swap sources again a moment. Oh, bear with me. So we're just going to swap video sources a moment so you guys can see the setup. There we go.
There we go. Great. Okay, I won't stand up because you'll only see my backside if I do that. So the machine itself has a safety cover, and it will only work with that safety cover in place. At the moment, the head of the machine, the spindle, is in the way for me to put the luggage tag in place. So we've got a hand controller here. Well, all I'm going to do is set it to move it to the view position. So I can now see to get the object in. So let's pick up that luggage tag. I'm going to align it to the bottom left-hand corner of the table, and I'm using a sticky mat. It's a silicon-coated mat, which is foam, that just gives enough grip to hold that in place. So the two settings that we're concerned about with the machine is one, the home position, where it takes its reference point, and that's the bottom left-hand corner. And I'm moving to the preset position now. So let's just have a look, see how that looks. And to be fair, that's pretty much bang on into that corner anyway. But it's a simple process of me just moving on these arrows to adjust that if I needed to adjust it. And then we can have an automatic setting, which I'll leave it on for the Z here. So it's going to come down, automatically trigger when it hits the surface, and then it's going to push down the 2 millimeters that I've prescribed for the engraving. Or I can set it manually. So I just need to, I should have done this first. If we can just go back, I'm just going to press output. And then we go back to the camera. And that will start the engraving process.
All right, so there's going to be a little bit of noise whilst it does this, but not too much. Hopefully you guys can see that tool just sort of moving across the material there and moving up and down. And as we said, that's just the diamond tip scraping the surface, right? So that's probably why it's not too noisy.
It's not too noisy. It's not too noisy. So again, if you're working on a kitchen table, then it's not going to interrupt you listening to the archers. And if you're in a shop, it's not going to frustrate your visitors either. Once we start rotary cutting, yes, there's more noise. So it depends on the material. So if you're working in hard material, then generally speaking, it's going to create more noise.
And hopefully you guys can get a bit of an idea of the scale of the machine as well. There, it's not huge. It can fit in the passenger seat of your car if it needs to.
Yeah,
it'll sit on a desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is an important point that with technology like this, you are mobile. If you wanted to do a wedding fair or a vintage car rally or Gymkhana or something like that, same as the MPX 95, the Matazza, you can take that on site, and you can do the same with this. You can put it in the car, you can take it on site, and you can run the engraving. And because it's got this cover, it's perfectly safe. So it doesn't matter if there are kids running around or anything, they're not going to get hurt by it. So how are we getting on? The big challenge is whether we're actually going to be able to show you this on screen. So I don't know whether we can post an image of it later. But
yeah, using the webcam, it's not the greatest for checking, but we'll take it out and see if we can give it a go.
So you can take our word for it.
Just give it a little.
It looks good.
Give it a little polish.
Let me see if I can hold it up, and maybe if I just reflect something dark into it, you might be able to see.
There you go. Just about.
Yeah. There we go. So it's a. If we go back to the main camera, it's a total style that's been built into Microsoft, built into Windows. We've taken little Joe's handwriting, which his mum's going to cherish forever.
she will, well, unless there's somebody else who's got a really nice mum called Joe, maybe they'll pinch her bag. But she'll like her luggage tag.
So there you go. I hope you found that useful. We've covered what the DE-3 is, what it can do, and some of the ideas of how you can make a good business out of using this kind of kit. So I don't know if we got any questions.
Let's have a look. We'll just jump over to the screen a second. So does anybody have any questions about the DE-3 or about engraving in general? It doesn't look like any have popped up throughout the session, so hopefully you guys have been listening in and enjoying what's been said anyway. What we'll do is, if it doesn't look like there are any questions, we'll call it a day. But feel free to get in touch if you do have any further questions. If you want to find out more about the machine or any of the processes that we talked through today. But thank you for joining us, and thank you, Peter, for coming along. And as I said, we'll just hold on for a couple more minutes here on the chat, just in case you guys do have anything. But if not, we'll see you next time. Cheers.
All right. Thanks a lot.